The officer checked the readings once. Then twice. Then a third time. The numbers did not change. The object drifting just inside Imperial sovereign space was alone. No fleet signature. No escort vessels. No stealth distortion. No hyperspace rupture trail. Just one warship. A murmur began to ripple across the command deck of the Imperial border fortress Val Torif. Officers leaned toward their consoles. Analysts recalibrated scanning arrays. Someone quietly ordered an independent system sweep. The result came back identical. The transponder identification code translated automatically across the main display. Origin, human. Silence fell. Even the background hum of the command chamber felt muted. Humans had not entered Imperial space in 70 years. Not since the border wars. And they had never come alone. Admiral Kayla Ven did not rise from his command throne immediately. His 4 eyes remained fixed on the tactical projection hovering in the center of the chamber. A single white glyph pulsed just inside the red boundary line that marked Imperial territory. One ship. No formation markers. No supply tenders. No support craft. Confirm mass displacement, Ven said calmly. Mass reading exceeds standard dreadnought classification, a sensor officer replied. By 32%. A pause. That would classify it as what? Ven asked. The officer swallowed. We do not have a classification for it, Admiral. The chamber stirred uneasily. Power output? Ven asked. Fluctuating, sir. Not charging weapons. Not cycling shields. It's stabilizing something. Stabilizing what? We don't know. A second layer of scans was deployed, gravitic analysis, neutrino tracing, subspace echo detection. Each returned the same impossible conclusion. The ship was not damaged. It was not lost. It was not hiding. It had crossed the border deliberately. And then stopped. As if waiting to be noticed. Run historical comparison, Ven ordered. Ancient battle archives flickered to life beside the tactical display. Grainy footage from the border wars scrolled past, human cruisers burning but refusing to retreat, crippled carriers ramming Imperial flagships, human captains transmitting final messages of defiance rather than surrender. Human vessels had been durable. Crude. Inefficient. But relentless. This ship matched none of them. Its hull geometry was angular but smooth, armored plating layered in patterns that suggested adaptive composition. Heat output minimal. Radiation bleed nearly non-existent. It looked controlled. Refined. Evolved. Admiral, another officer said quietly, there is no fleet in neighboring sectors. Long-range arrays confirm. Ven finally stood. They sent one. The words hung heavy in the air. Then it happened. For exactly 3 seconds, the human vessel powered its primary core. Every display across the fortress flickered. Lights dimmed. Sensor arrays momentarily blanked. A wave of distortion rolled across the tactical projection like a stone dropped into still water. And then, everything stabilized. Power readings returned to normal. The human ship's output dropped back to its previous low baseline. No weapons fired. No shields raised. No movement. It had simply flexed. The message was unmistakable. Damage report, Ven demanded. None, Admiral, came the reply. But our outer sensor buoys temporarily desynchronized. For 3 seconds we were blind. Blind? Ven repeated. Yes, sir. Ven stared at the lone glyph on the projection. A single vessel had just demonstrated the ability to disrupt a border fortress designed to withstand siege fleets. Without attacking. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. Incoming transmission. Origin, human vessel. Encoded. Structured. Formal. The translation algorithm engaged automatically. The message resolved onto the central display. No threat markers. No tactical commands. Just text. This is a courtesy visit. No further data. No demands. No explanation. The chamber remained frozen. Courtesy? No fleet arrives alone for courtesy. No warship crosses sovereign borders for courtesy. Ven's gaze hardened. Signal the capital, he ordered quietly. Inform the Emperor's council that a human vessel has entered Imperial space. He hesitated, then added, alone. Across the void, the single white glyph continued to pulse softly inside Imperial territory. It did not advance. It did not retreat. It simply waited. And for the first time in 70 years, the Galactic Empire felt something it had almost forgotten. Uncertainty. The Emperor's War Council did not convene publicly. They never did when the word human was involved. Deep beneath the capital world of Vela Prime, inside a chamber carved from black stellar stone, 12 figures gathered in silence. Holographic projections shimmered above the circular war table. At its center, one ship. Still motionless. Still alone. Still inside Imperial space. 70 years, Grand Strategist Malrek said quietly. They have not crossed our border in 70 years. And before that, another counselor asked. Malrek did not answer immediately. The chamber lights dimmed as archival footage filled the air. The border wars. Human ships burning but still firing. Human marines fighting in vacuum after hull breaches. Human fleets retreating only when physically unable to advance. The Empire had won territory. Yes. They had forced concessions. Yes. But they had never broken humanity's will. Never shattered a fleet completely. Never forced unconditional surrender. Humans had simply stopped fighting. And withdrawn. That had been the most unsettling part. This vessel does not match previous human schematics, Chief Engineer Vorlon said, enlarging the projection. The whole structure rotated slowly. Loud plating. Minimal exposed weapon emplacements. No obvious shield projectors. It appears inefficient, one counselor scoffed. Vorlon's voice remained calm. Respectfully, that is what we believed 70 years ago. Silence. Energy analysis charts appeared beside the hologram. The core output spikes are controlled and deliberate. They are not weapon charges. Then what are they? Someone demanded. Vorlon zoomed in further. They are field manipulations. The room stilled. Gravitational? Malrek asked. Possibly. But not in any configuration we recognize. It's cleaner. Cleaner. A dangerous word in military science. Back at Border Fortress Val Torith, Admiral Venn stood alone in his observation chamber. The human ship was visible now through magnified external arrays, a distant silhouette against the stars. No visible damage. No visible aggression. Just presence. Admiral, a communications officer said softly, we have completed long-range surveillance. No hidden fleets. No cloaked signatures. So it truly is alone, Venn murmured. Yes, sir. Humans do not act without calculation. He remembered the final transmission of the border wars. A human admiral, blood across his face, staring into the camera. We are not finished. We are adapting. At the time, it had sounded like defiance. Now, it sounded like a promise. Back in the War Council chamber, the Emperor himself finally spoke. What does it want? No one answered. Because the answer frightened them. If it wanted war, it would not have come alone. If it wanted negotiation, it would have sent diplomats. This was neither. It was a statement. Deploy containment fleets, the Emperor ordered. 3 Imperial armadas, each capable of crushing a planetary defense network, received immediate mobilization commands. Their mission: encircle. Observe. Do not fire unless ordered. The human vessel remained motionless as hyperspace ruptures bloomed around it. One fleet. Then another. Then a third. Hundreds of warships formed a tightening sphere around the solitary intruder. The tactical display on Vela Prime filled with Imperial red. And at the center, one white glyph. Unmoved. Reaction, the Emperor asked. Vorlon studied the readings. None. No shields. Negative. No weapon charge. Negative. The human ship did not even rotate. It did not acknowledge the fleets forming around it. It simply waited. Then a junior analyst, young, inexperienced, spoke without thinking. It's not afraid. The chamber turned toward him. He swallowed but continued. It crossed into our territory alone. It demonstrated superior field control. And now it is surrounded by 3 armadas. He hesitated. And it has not adjusted a single defensive parameter. A cold realization began spreading through the chamber. Malrek leaned forward slowly. It did not come here expecting to survive a battle. The analyst shook his head. No, sir. He looked at the projection again. It came here knowing it wouldn't need one. On the tactical display, the human ship's power signature shifted slightly. Not a weapon charge. Not a shield surge. Just a subtle increase. As if preparing to demonstrate something. Again. A new transmission request flashed across Imperial channels. This time directed not at the border fortress, but at the Emperor's capital itself. Priority override. Unencrypted. Calm. The message contained only one line. We have observed your fleet expansion. This is your warning. Silence gripped the War Council. Fleet expansion. That information was classified beyond even most Imperial admirals. How long had humanity been watching? How far did their surveillance reach? And if this was a warning, what would enforcement look like? The lone white glyph pulsed steadily at the center of 3 armadas. And for the first time in Imperial history, the Empire was not certain it held the advantage. 3 Imperial armadas surrounded the human vessel in perfect formation. Hundreds of warships. Thousands of weapons arrays. Enough firepower to erase a continent from orbit. And at the center, 1 human ship. Still motionless. Still silent. Still alone. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominion Spear, High Admiral Tarek stood rigid before the forward viewport. The human warship was now visible without magnification, a dark, angular silhouette suspended in starlight. It did not drift. It did not maneuver. It simply held position as though anchored to reality itself. Final confirmation, Tarek's ordered. No shield generation. None detected. No weapon charge. None. No auxiliary fleet in surrounding sectors. Negative, Admiral. Tarex narrowed his eyes. They are provoking us. Back on Vela Prime, the Emperor's War Council watched through a live tactical feed. This is a warning, Malrek cautioned. We should not escalate. It entered our sovereign territory, another counselor snapped. To do nothing invites weakness. The Emperor's gaze remained fixed on the display. Admiral Tarex, he transmitted calmly, conduct a probe strike. Silence rippled across the chamber. A controlled test, the Emperor clarified. Minimal yield. Demonstrate Imperial authority. Tarex bowed his head. As you command. Weapons crews aboard the Dominion Spear powered a single forward lance battery. A precision plasma bolt, low yield by fleet standards, but more than sufficient to cripple a cruiser. Target lock engaged. The human vessel did not move. Fire! The lance discharged in a brilliant arc of blue-white energy. Across every Imperial display, the projectile tracked cleanly toward the target. Impact in 3, 2, 1. Nothing. The bolt vanished. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Not intercepted. It simply ceased to exist meters before contact. Sensor arrays screamed in confusion. No detonation signature. No shield impact. No energy dispersion. Tarex's claws tightened around his command rail. Where did it go? Then something far worse happened. Every targeting system in the surrounding armadas flickered. One by one. Lock indicators turned red. Not because they were jammed, but because they were no longer tracking a valid object. The human ship disappeared from all scans. Visual, thermal, gravitic, neutrino, subspace, gone. Yet through the viewport, it was still there, unchanged, unmoved. Reality insisted it existed. Imperial instruments insisted it did not. Admiral, a sensor officer whispered, voice shaking. Our systems show empty space. That is impossible, Tarex growled. Yes, sir. Across the fleet network, confusion erupted. Ships recalibrated. Diagnostics ran. Redundant systems activated. All returned the same result. The human vessel occupied space visually, but no longer registered as a targetable object. Then a proximity alarm blared aboard the Dominion Spear. Contact! From where? Behind us. Tarek spun toward the tactical projection. The white glyph reappeared, directly aft of the Imperial flagship. Distance, 2.1 kilometers. No warp rupture. No spatial distortion. No measurable transition. It had not traveled. It had simply changed position. Impossible. Across the armadas, panic rippled. How did it move? There was no displacement event. No hyperspace tear. No gravitational spike. The human vessel rotated slowly, now facing the flagship's vulnerable stern. Weapons still dormant. Shield still offline. A final humiliation. A transmission cut through every Imperial channel simultaneously. Clear. Calm. Unhurried. A human voice. You are still relying on prediction-based targeting. A pause. That is inefficient. Tarex felt a cold sensation coil through his chest. The human ship had not evaded the plasma lance. It had rewritten the engagement conditions. Charge all batteries. Tarex roared. Before the order could propagate, every Imperial weapon capacitor across 3 armadas drained to 0. Instantly. Not damaged. Not destroyed. Just empty. As though they had already fired. Shock reports flooded in. Navigation desynchronized. Formation drift increasing. Communications lag across fleet net. No explosions. No casualties. But absolute helplessness. On Vela Prime, the War Council stared in stunned silence. Vorlin's voice was barely audible. It's running battlefield simulations in real time. Malrek turned slowly. What does that mean? It means, Vorlin swallowed, it is calculating outcomes before we act, and adjusting the conditions. The Emperor leaned back slowly. We are not fighting it. No, Vorlin whispered. We are participating in its demonstration. On the flagship, Admiral Tarex watched the human vessel drift calmly back to its original position, center of the formation. As if nothing had happened. As if the last 2 minutes had been a lesson. The transmission resumed. We did not enter your space to engage. A pause. But we will not repeat ourselves. The channel closed. 3 Imperial armadas remained fully operational. Yet completely neutralized. By 1 ship. Sent alone. For the first time in his long military career. High Admiral Tarex understood something terrifying. The humans had not come to threaten. They had come to show. And they had only used a fraction of what they were capable of. No explosions echoed through space. No debris fields burned in silence. No ships were destroyed. And yet, 3 Imperial armadas floated in perfect formation, unable to act. Weapon capacitors drained. Navigation grids misaligned by microscopic distortions. Fleet communications operating with a fractional delay, just enough to prevent synchronized fire. The human vessel rested at the center. Untouched. Unthreatened. Unhurried. On Vela Prime, the War Council chamber felt colder. This cannot be sustained, one counselor insisted. Their energy reserves must be degrading. Vorlin shook his head slowly. No, counselor. Energy projections hovered before them. The human ship's core output was steady. Stable. Minimal. It was not straining. It was not overheating. It was barely engaged. Malrek's voice lowered. How much of its capability are we witnessing? Vorlin did not answer immediately. He enlarged the recorded moment of the vanished plasma lance. The projectile did not disperse. It did not impact a shield. It did not curve away. It simply ceased to exist within a precisely defined spatial boundary. Vorlin magnified the distortion pattern. This is not shield technology. Then what is it? The Emperor asked quietly. Vorlin's next words landed heavily. It is localized rule alteration. Silence. It is not blocking our weapons, Vorlin continued. It is adjusting the constants that govern how they function. A counselor scoffed nervously. That is theoretical nonsense. 70 years ago, Vorlon replied calmly, so was human persistence. Back aboard the Dominion's spear, Admiral Tarek stood motionless. The human ship slowly rotated again, deliberate, controlled, almost curious. Then something else happened. Across the armadas, weapon systems reactivated. Capacitors refilled. Targeting arrays recalibrated. Navigation systems realigned. In less than 3 seconds, full functionality restored. Gasps filled Imperial bridges. They've released us. Why? A captain demanded. As if in answer, another transmission opened. This time, visual. A human commander appeared on every Imperial display. Calm expression. No visible strain. Uniform simple. Unadorned. Behind him, the interior of the human warship glowed with restrained blue light. We are not here for war, he said evenly. His voice carried no anger. No arrogance. Just certainty. On Vela Prime, the Emperor leaned forward. Then why are you here? He demanded through the live channel. The human commander's eyes met the camera directly. Because you have begun rearming. A ripple of unease spread across the chamber. Fleet expansion plans. Outer colony fortification. Deep-range weapons research. All classified beyond civilian knowledge. The human commander continued. You believed the border wars ended unresolved. They did, Malrek muttered. The human's gaze hardened slightly. No. They ended paused. Data flooded Imperial systems without request. Projection schematics of Imperial shipyards. Construction timelines. Expansion charts. Supply route maps. Every classified rearmament initiative displayed openly. How? Someone whispered. The human commander answered before the question finished. We have been observing. For how long? The Emperor demanded. The human did not hesitate. Since before the final ceasefire was signed. The chamber fell completely silent. Decades. Humanity had been watching for decades. Not reacting. Not provoking. Watching. The human ship's core signature rose slightly again. Not aggressively. Just enough to remind them. We adapted, the commander said. You believed we retreated in weakness. Another slight pause. We retreated in preparation. Outside, the 3 armadas suddenly detected something new. Not within the human ship. But beyond it. Deep space arrays began registering faint signatures at the edge of detection range. Multiple points. Massive. Dormant. Imperial analysts scrambled. Long-range objects, extreme distance, energy signatures suppressed. How many? Tarex demanded. The answer came softly. Unknown. The human commander spoke again. You are not surrounded. A beat. But you are within range. On Vela Prime, Vorlon's voice trembled. The vessel we are observing. He pulled up comparative mass charts. Is not Dreadnought class. The Emperor stared. Then what is it? Vorlon swallowed. Scout class. The word felt absurd in the chamber. Scout. A vessel that could neutralize 3 armadas without firing. A scout. The human commander's final words in the transmission were measured. This demonstration used less than 1% of our fleet capability. Less than 1%. The message did not require repetition. The channel closed. 3 Imperial armadas floated in silence. Fully operational. Fully capable. Yet no captain dared issue a firing command. Because for the first time, they understood. The human ship had not come to threaten annihilation. It had come to clarify hierarchy. On Vela Prime, the Emperor leaned back slowly. What do they want? He asked quietly. Malrek answered in a whisper. They want us to understand. Outside, the single human vessel drifted calmly at the center of Imperial power. And for the first time in a century, the Galactic Empire realized something irreversible. They were no longer the apex force in the galaxy. The human vessel did not move. It did not posture. It did not charge weapons. 3 Imperial armadas surrounded it, fully restored, fully armed, fully capable of obliteration. And yet, no one fired. Because everyone understood. The demonstration had not been an attack. It had been calibration. On Vela Prime, the Emperor stood alone before the transmission console. "Open channel," he ordered. The human commander reappeared almost instantly. No delay. No encryption delay. As if they had been waiting. "You have made your point," the Emperor said carefully. The human's expression did not change. "That was not the objective." A pause. "Then state it." The human commander folded his hands calmly. "You began expanding your outer fleets beyond defensive posture. You fortified border worlds near neutral systems. You reactivated dormant war foundries." Each statement struck like a quiet accusation. The Emperor did not deny it. Preparation is not aggression. The human nodded slightly. "Agreed." Silence filled the chamber. "Which is why we have not treated it as such." The Emperor's gaze sharpened. "Then why send a warship?" The human commander answered without hesitation. "Because one was sufficient." Across deep space, Imperial long-range arrays continued detecting faint, distant signatures. Massive. Stationary. Watching. The human commander continued. "You believed the previous conflict ended inconclusively." "It did," the Emperor insisted. The human's eyes did not waver. "No. It ended with both sides learning." The words carried no hostility. Only certainty. "You learned that humanity will not break. We learned that next time, we should not fight fair." A subtle ripple passed through Imperial sensor networks again. Not disruptive. Not disabling. Just a reminder. The human vessel's core briefly flared. And every deep space array lit up with clarity. For one brief second. The hidden signatures at the edge of detection fully resolved. Hundreds of them. Enormous structures. Ships larger than anything in the Imperial registry. Energy outputs dwarfing entire armadas. Then the readings faded again. Back to faint echoes. The human commander spoke softly. "This ship is not a dreadnought." The Emperor remained silent. "It is not a capital ship." Silence. "It is not even frontline command class." A final pause. "It is reconnaissance." The meaning settled into the room like gravity. This was the smallest statement humanity felt necessary to make. The smallest. The Emperor straightened. "What are your terms?" "Not surrender. Not submission. Terms." The human nodded once. "You will halt fleet expansion beyond defensive thresholds. You will cease weapons development targeting gravitational disruption. You will open your outer sectors to monitored transparency." The Emperor's voice hardened. "And if we refuse?" The human commander's expression remained calm. "Then next time we will not send one." The weight of that sentence echoed louder than any weapon discharge. Long seconds passed. In orbit, 3 armadas waited. In deep space, unseen giants lingered beyond sight. The Emperor finally spoke. "We will suspend expansion." A controlled breath moved through the chamber. "We will open negotiations." The human inclined his head slightly. "Wise." Without flourish. Without victory parade. Without further demonstration. The lone human vessel rotated slowly. Its engines ignited with controlled brilliance. No hyperspace rupture. No violent distortion. Just a smooth departure. It crossed the Imperial borderline. And vanished into the dark. Across Imperial command networks, silence reigned. Ships remained intact. No worlds burned. No casualties recorded. And yet, every officer understood. The balance of power had shifted permanently. On Vela Prime, Malrek finally spoke. "They sent one ship." The Emperor stared at the empty tactical projection. "Yes." Malrek swallowed. "And it was enough." Far beyond Imperial space, aboard the departing vessel, the human commander looked toward the stars. "Status?" "All Imperial fleets holding position," an officer replied. "Expansion halted." The commander nodded once. "Good." No celebration. No cheers. Just quiet professionalism. Humanity had not come to conquer. They had come to ensure something simple. That the next war would never begin.